What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. We are back here tonight to primarily take a look at some contracts, some updates that we've got. Nothing too crazy or groundbreaking or anything like that. But just a couple things that, like I said, we've got some updates on. We did get a debut, which kind of ties into the contract signing for WWE as well. So we're starting off with that, but of course, I have to talk about the big, in my opinion, the big angle that closed the show on Dynamite this week between Mariah May and Toni Storm. So we'll probably be ending the show here tonight with that. But as always, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for checking out the show. I truly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Kickashbowl, the show at Kickash_, and you can also follow me personally at ASHMANNS as well. So yeah, feel free to do that if you'd like. Thank you for listening either on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff, wherever you're doing so. Or if you're watching here on YouTube, I appreciate that as well. Feel free to follow the show, subscribe, and all that good stuff. But yeah, the big news for WWE signing, and I think the lineup that I have here, the notes that I wrote down is all female, if I'm not mistaken. So that's pretty cool as well. Didn't even intend for that to happen. Just a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say, right? But the big signing, and again, in my opinion, I was actually kind of surprised. Of course, she had always mentioned it was her dream to go to WWE, but I'm sure it's MJF's dream to go to WWE at some point too, right? And he re-signed with AEW. I'm sure, obviously, there's many differences between a Stephanie Vaquer and a MJF, right? But if we're just talking about dreams and end goals, obviously they probably have something in common there with them both wanting to end up in WWE. And I brought that up because we obviously just saw her wrestle Mercedes Moné, right, at the past pay per view for AEW. So it's a very good chance that that could have gone off and rubbed her the right way, and she could have wanted to stay there, and like the freedom of being able to travel back and forth, possibly something like what Will Ospreay does, with the UK, right? He's still able to live over there and travels back to the US. I think it's what for 2 weeks at I don't know exactly, but he ends up showing up on what, like two dynamites and maybe a collision or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And I, you you notice when he's there, but it's not like a glaring hole, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's like kind of when you're going throughout the show, it's like, oh yeah, Will Ospreay's not here tonight or whatever. But it's not like oh man, the show sucks because he's not there, because thankfully, and we're still working on that, right? But AEW does have other stars and have other programs and angles. Say what you want on if they are as good as some angles in the past, or if they could be better, or whatever the case. Regardless, they still have some good stuff going on. You can't discredit that, right? So my point is, she could have very easily just said, you know what, I'm gonna not stay in her comfort zone, but maybe take advantage of the AEW flexibility and still be able to live in Mexico and wrestle in Mexico City still, and travel the world and do what she's doing, right? And still do her indie shows and things like that, and have a kind of like a hybrid type schedule. But she didn't. She chose to sign with WWE. I think it's a big signing, like I said, for WWE. I think having her go to NXT, which is the route that they're going, right? Shawn Michaels sent a tweet, pretty much just showing that he was excited and that he can't wait to see her in Orlando. So girl, if you need a friend, I'm not too far. I'm like 10 minutes from the Performance Center, so let's go. But yeah, no, I think it's a huge signing. Well, maybe huge is over exaggerating a bit, but I think it's a good signing, a good quality signing, and a big signing, and a big coup. And I think, and when I say huge, because I think it's going to be huge long term. There's just something about her. I think that she could be in 5 years from now, maybe. I don't want to be dramatic or drastic or anything, but I think she could possibly be a main eventing pay-per-views, if not a Mania. Um, just A-ring quality wise, I think obviously she's one of those that has the fundamentals, and you pretty much doesn't need an NXT. She just needs an NXT for the WWE style and the WWE world. And it's what we at my full time, we kind of equate it as like in the particular department that I work for, they say that they can hire someone off of the street who knows the certain skills in I don't want to give it away, but in what I do, right? But they need to learn our company's way. So you still have to go through the training that I had to. I was someone who knew nowhere near as much as some other people do, right? In the same field, but had certain skills that got me to that department, right? Obviously, that's with any job and with any of us in any field. But me and someone who had literally 15, 20 years of the experience for that field had to go through the training to get the company feel and to learn what the company looks for and what the company wants. And that's what NXT is, and that's why it always just blows my mind when so many people freak out, like, "Oh my god, why are they sending them to NXT?" Like, they're already, like, shitting on the character, or they're already shitting on them, like, they're already just not utilizing them right, and it's like, hold on. Let's see. First of all, let's see how long they end up in NXT, right? If we're talking Stephanie's still in NXT 2, 3, 4 years from now, then yeah, maybe there's a problem and something to discuss, right? But I don't see that. I see maybe a year max. And again, that just depends on how quickly she's able to pick up the WWE style, get acclimated to things. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure how fluent she is in English. So that could be something she'll get help with here as well. So yeah, I think it's a great thing, and it's a great signing for WWE. It's a great move for her to be going to NXT. I love that she already debuted in WWE tonight, and it would hurt, like, if nothing else, right? Like, what a like, can you write a more beautiful, poetic debut than her debuting? It was a live show still, but again, the live shows, or house shows rather, are some of the, like, most fun shows to go to. I've mentioned before, and it was in WWE or WWE. I was reading the hashtag, but it was in Mexico City that she got to debut in against Isla Dawn, and I think that was a great opponent for her to debut against as well. So, and she has pretty sweet entrance music. It's not too shabby. So again, I'm super excited for her. I think, not to beat a dead horse, it's a good signing for WWE as a whole, long term. And I think there, which it's a nice segue into the next contract status I wanted to kind of touch base on here. But just wrapping up the AEW portion of it. Again, I'm still just something in me is just I was, if I had to put money on, or just like a percentage, I would have said like maybe 60-40. She would have gone to AEW, at least for now, maybe done like a year, 2 year deal with AEW and then gone over to WWE. Um, but shout out to her, props to her, and props to her for betting on herself, having the courage to make that jump, and to just take the next chapter. You know what I mean? I can't wait to see what she ends up doing. She's gonna have just a plethora of talent to work with, right? And again, starting with NXT, it's going to be fun to see her develop there. I again, like, I'm very interested to see how long they end up keeping her down there. Again, I'm sticking with probably around a year, or maybe even from now until next year's WrestleMania, and then maybe the Raw after Mania, have her be one of the surprise call-ups type situations, or maybe on SmackDown, depending on what the landscape is looking like then. Again, it's way too early to make any type of prediction roster-wise, but I could see her being a dominating champion in NXT too, kind of like hit the ground running, get in there and just showcase what she's about, have a couple matches here and there or not here and there, but right off the bat to show the fans here who may not be familiar with her in-ring work and may have just heard of her name and like, oh, she's supposed to be a big deal, and to show everyone why she is. And then have some type of qualifying match, and then go from there. So again, good coup for WWE. I'm glad they recognized and saw the talent there. And shout out to her again. I can't wait to see what she ends up doing in the future. But that does tie in my next contract conversation that I wanted to bring up here and kind of transition to. And speaking of WWE NXT, that's Jordynne Grace. We got a little bit of a update here that from, and it's a pretty reliable source, Jordynne Grace herself. She says she is under contract until January of this upcoming year. It's coming up. And that was when she was a guest on the Matt Morgan Gigantic Pop show. And she was asked about the status of her TNA contract, so she provided it. Um, the article goes on to say, and this is from, yeah, russellpierce.com, so shout out to them. I originally saw this on Twitter, so shout out to everyone who was involved there. There's another quote. Yeah, she said, recently I found out that TJ Wilson, which is Natalya's, which I'm obviously going to be talking, or obviously, because you guys wouldn't know that unless you saw my notes. But ironically is what I was going to say. We'll be talking about her and TJ here in a moment. But I found out that TJ Wilson was actually the one who put my name in the hat during a creative meeting, and I don't think I've said that during an interview before because I just recently, like within the past month, found it out. But he had watched my match with Trinity at Hard to Kill, and he watched that match, and I think they were all discussing who to bring in because I don't think they had any big surprises, and he pitched me, so I haven't got to thank him in person. So if you ever listen to this, thank you, TJ. So thank you, TJ, from us fans as well. Shout out to him. And again, it shows maybe not the higher ups, but WWE does watch, and they do watch other talent in other programs. Most likely, they don't watch week to week, but and I like that they mentioned the match specifically, and that it was the match with her and Trinity, of course, Naomi and WWE at Hard to Kill, um, because it shows again kind of how a shitty situation with the whole Naomi, Sasha Banks, WWE departure situation. Um, God, what was that, like 3 years ago now? 2, 3 years ago now? It's crazy. Time is just fucking crazy now. Um, but had all that not happened and Naomi and Trinity not, or Naomi and Trinity, Naomi and Sasha Banks not end up leaving WWE and then end up getting released or whatever happened, again, the departure, without Trinity making it and betting on herself as well. Because I think there was a time where there was reports out that she had the opportunity to go back to WWE and she just declined at the time and she was just again betting on herself and doing her own thing and she went to TNA. And again, I really respect the fact that she did that. And it's really cool to see how she grew in TNA and the fact that her taking that bet on herself and that leap over to TNA and bringing that credibility and that star power and that name value to TNA, that put her in a match with Jordynne Grace, TNA's one of TNA's, if not TNA's biggest female knockout, or not female knockout, but I was gonna say female wrestler, but they're called the knockouts over there. TNA's biggest knockout. That put Jordynne Grace then on the map for WWE for a TJ Wilson, who is a phenomenal agent and producer, to see that match because obviously Trinity, Naomi was in it, and we see what ended up happening. So it's very cool. And it's just really, really neat to see just how wrestling is growing in this year. And yeah, man, it sucks how a lot of shitty things had to happen for us to be at this point, but it's just a really good sign for the future, and it gives you a lot of hope, if nothing else. We did end up getting an update, transitioning is again here, to someone I mentioned earlier, to Natalya. And I'm kind of bummed, to be honest with you guys. We did get an update, like I was saying, that she ended up re-signing with WWE, which isn't obviously that big of a shocker. She's been with them. God, I forget what it was that like 15, over 15 years or something crazy like that? I don't know if I have it notated here, but especially with her husband, TJ Wilson, still being employed with WWE and being we've seen by all accounts, right? With um, especially in the women's division, how involved her husband TJ Wilson is, and what a great producer he is, right? So again, it's not surprising, but the reason I say I'm disappointed is because I kind of wanted her to jump like jump over to the other grass and see not necessarily if it's greener, but I kind of wanted to see her play in AEW, as you already know, for a little bit. And I think it really would have been fun to see her not even go directly there. And again, I'm not one of those that once a talent leaves one company, they should, like a WWE, they should go straight to AEW. I'm actually quite the opposite. But I think, especially for AEW's women division, I think she would have been a phenomenal fit. I think she would have been that veteran that they need. And again, not saying that no disrespect to any of the veterans that they do have there, but I think just with her skills and the knowledge that she brings, she's a great, obviously, she's a just phenomenal worker, right? And she knows she's the one who trained Ronda Rousey when she came in. So she's been in that situation where she needs not needs to, but she is that kind of like the backstage gatekeeper where like she's the measuring stick. Like you come in and you see where your skill level is at, and she helps you refine it and helps you grow and helps you say like kind of like I'm not gonna say like a Paul Heyman, but the quote that he would always say that always stuck out to me was accentuate the positives and hide the negatives, right? So in my mind, that's kind of Natalya in the training route. And not saying that she doesn't deserve like a her own title run or anything like that if she were to go over to AEW, and not even advocating for it either. But I think that she she definitely could have had a good run there, and I think it just would have been cool to see her in a different environment and just to see what she wanted, what she believes of her character and who she is as a wrestler should be portrayed as on TV. Um, and I think that has been one of the downsides to Natalia and WWE, and no fault of her own even, is that they never really have taken her seriously in that character route and in that sense. Obviously, yes, in the wrestling sense and making sure that whoever they need to be good is good, right? But in trusting someone to if they need someone to be a challenger for the heavyweight or for the heavyweight championship now, technically the women do have one. Um to be that contender, to be someone who needs to just face a random opponent, right? Like she's kind of like that piece that can fit in almost anywhere in that division. And again, probably more so than we even know behind the scenes. But again, me personally, I think it would have been cool to see what she could have offered in AEW or even on the indie run to kind of see her just showing up at random shows and seeing how active she wanted to be. If she would want to take as many bookings as she could, or just want maybe would want to do a couple a month, or just not just take time off and just chill. I think I'm pretty certain she's a big her and TJ are big cat people, so just spending time with their cats, at home and just chill. But again, am I surprised that she re-signed with WWE? Absolutely not. Just the fan of me just thought it would be cool to kind of see what she could do in a different environment. But that's out of the ballpark there, and probably will never really come up. So it is what it is, and nothing major, anything too crazy. But yeah, again, it happy for her. She deserves that security and deserves that job, and that role. So shout out to her. But next that I want to talk about, of course, is what I think um has just kind of stolen the show or stolen the week, in my opinion, and kind of I don't know why. Maybe I do know why. And maybe it's a little biasy, I guess I should say, but the stuff with Mariah May and Tony Storm, I think was a masterpiece. And I think it was what, a 3-minute segment, maybe 4 minutes in totality from when the match ended. Mariah won. They celebrated. They obviously had their celebration in the ring. They skipped up the ramp. Mariah, I will get into it. And then so from that happening into the very end of the show, I it couldn't have been more than 4 minutes, I would imagine. And the impact that the visuals that angle and that segment had it's just monumental. And I think that it really ignited Mariah May, and it really gave her a different side in a split second. And I was not expecting it at all. And I don't know if maybe a lot of people were, and I'm just in the minority here, but I thought we were in for not necessarily the long haul, but again, or at least rather until we got closer to All In, and if it was going to be a week or two prior, or even if they didn't turn on each other, even if it was just a mutual respect thing, they still remain close or whatever, or Mariah loses and then she snaps, or she wins it, whatever, like I figured it would happen closer to All In, or if not closer to at All In. And it didn't. It surely did not. That it took a drastic turn on. I think drastic is the word of the night. I don't fucking know why. And there's the first cuss word. It is very late or early, depending on your concept of time. So if I get a little crazy out here, forgive me. Um, but the impact, and we'll just start, and we'll just go over it now. So obviously, Mariah May is your winner of the Owen Hart. I always, whenever I go to say this, I always mess it up. But the finals tournament, right? She's the fucking winner, and she earned the right to face Toni Storm at All In. Obviously, we know the story. Not here to play catch up right now. Because obviously, if you watch this, you know what's going on. The segment began right after that, and to me, it was one of those situations where as I was watching it, because I kind of knew what happened, I knew something happened, I didn't see what happened, obviously, or didn't see any, like, glimpses on Twitter, but it was one of those where I kinda had an idea something happened, and then before I was able to go home and watch it because I was working, but when I saw it, it hit me differently. It kind of hit me like one of those like a scary movie almost, and or not even a scary movie, but, like, a scene where someone is pummeled, and we'll get to that because I kind of want to go in order. So after Mariah wins, a brief celebration in the ring. Toni Storm is just elated. She's running around outside the ring, gets in the ring. She has her heels off. She had that long like sheer shawl thing or whatever. That was kind of not kind of, it was see through, but it's kind of like a mesh type material, and it had like little flat or doesn't matter, but I say it because what she was wearing and her heels and all that kind of makes a big deal at the end and what ends up happening with the outcome. And Mariah jumps on Toni Storm. They're celebrating in the ring. They're hugging it out, all that good shit. Leave. They thought, and shout out to them because, and that was when, of course, Toni Storm grabbed the heels. Watch out for the shoe from the apron of the ring in one hand and has Mariah in the other arms, and they start to skip up the ramp. And fucking shout out to them because they held on to each other's arms, arm in arm, and were skipping. Not necessarily synchronized, but damn near close to it. And skipping is hard enough, and to do it when you're cross-armed with someone, like, on national TV in front of thousands of people, like, props to you guys. So I was like, I was pretty impressed with that. But I did think, and again, maybe it's because I had an idea that something happened. Again, I didn't know exactly what happened, but I had an idea that Mariah turned on Toni Storm. So as Toni was, and before we get detailed into it, I have to just praise Toni Storm because the acting this woman has done, and just on, I don't even want to get into leading up to it. Just this night alone, between this segment and then there was a clip that AEW posted of her being brought backstage, just marvelous. What do TV actors get? An Emmy? Is that what they get? She deserves an Emmy. It's it's just, and it's again ironic because of her character. But the fact that she was so in tune with her reactions and not being over dramatic and not being cheesy and not being just, "Oh, like, oh, I have to sell this and make sure my face looks," no, like, she was really feeling it, and you were like, and I think that's what hit me. I honestly think that's what really made it sink in for me. So, to get back on track, uh Toni Storm is they've separated at this point. Toni is finalizing her skips and making her way to the top of the ramp. And at this point, Mariah May has gone up to the trophy and grabbed the title because with the tournament you get a trophy and a title. Don't know why you get both, but it worked out here. And my goodness, within maybe 2 seconds of the transition of her grabbing the title, and then Toni Storm looking at her and kind of realizing something's not right, Mariah May just whacks her in the head with the championship title. Um, Toni Storm goes down, and then Mariah just starts whipping her with the title. And at first, before we ended up seeing what happened next, just the whipping with the title, and then oh my god, Luther, I almost said Ludwig Kaiser. Wouldn't that be something? But Luther made his way up the ramp to stop Mariah, and she just started whipping him with the championship too. And I don't recall the last time that I've seen someone whip their opponent essentially with the actual title itself. And I don't know why at first that just really stood out to me. It's something so simple, but I really, and if you guys remember an obvious one that's very recent or just even within the past couple of years, that stood out to you, just let me know. Drop it in the comments or on Twitter or whatever is easiest for you. But that itself at first was like, wow, like something so simple, but like it looked like it fucking hurt. It looked like Mariah was fucking crazy. Luther was selling it great, and then Luther got up, and then she ended up hitting him in the head with the championship as well, and he got flung off the stage and plummeted through two tables that were like stage tables that were set up at the on the floor below. At this point, we pan back over to Toni Storm, and she is bleeding, but it wasn't. And again, like everything was just so perfect for this, and that's why I can't get over it. uh, Toni is just bleeding. There's almost kind of like Chad Gable, like she got shot right in the center of the forehead, but it wasn't as big of a circle. It was almost like a beautiful, like she got almost like it was dead on. Like you would imagine like the corner of the championship or a piece of the championship title just punctured her right in this damn near center of the forehead, and she had a stream of blood coming down. And but it wasn't gushing down. It wasn't like already like a crimson mask when the first time we see her. And it wasn't one of those things where it's like you really have all that blood over one small hit to the face like that. Like come on, that we've seen in the past. And just the way, like this is gonna sound probably fucking creepy and disgusting, so I apologize if you're squeamish. Disclosure and warning. Um, but the way that the blood, and after, of course, after this, Tony's or Mariah May gets Toni Storm. Tony's pretty much on her knees. Mariah gets behind her and grabs the heel, right? Watch out for the shoe. Grabs the heel, which is white, which is why I mentioned earlier that the attire that Toni was wearing and the colors and everything, it really makes a difference. So Toni again is just the blood's coming down, but it's not nothing crazy yet. Mariah takes the heel, the obviously high heel shoe, and just starts spiking it into her head, and it looked fucking brutal. It looked like, and at one point I was like I even kind of cringed a bit, like I kind of like winced a bit. It looked like she was beating the fuck out of Toni Storm, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe. Yes, we've seen like for instance, if we're just solely watching AEW, we've seen Dr. Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa being women, just keeping in the same division for comparison. We've seen them get bloody, right? And that was like a more badass type, like okay, like a grunge type of bleeding and type of situation. This was more emotional. This was I'm here to fucking hurt you. I'm a little bit crazy. I'm here to just not kill you, but I'm here to take everything that you love, and I'm starting with the most symbolic thing that she started out with before she had the title, she being Toni Storm, was her shoe. That was her thing. Watch out for the shoe. Tits up, watch out for the shoe type shit, right? That was her go-to. And that symbolizes the Toni Storm character, this new version that we have of her. So to see that being the thing that really amplified and just really just took it to the next level was just another beautiful piece in my opinion. So Mariah May just hits her, I don't even know how many times, with the spike, the heel of the shoe. And Toni Storm reacts, not screaming, not flailing around, not going crazy, not yelling, not doing anything like that, no, not overreacting. She reacts as someone who, like, honestly, like how you would think it would happen if someone that you love and someone that you think is whatever you want to call them, best friends, your sister, whatever type of close bond that Toni viewed Mariah in. Obviously, we have a few different descriptions for what Mariah most likely viewed Toni in, or we don't even know now if that was real. Um, but Toni did develop a bond with Mariah May, and it was just heartbreak, and it was almost like the physical pain that Mariah May was doing to Toni, obviously it hurt and it was impacting her, and it was making the bleeding more and more impactful and more dramatic as it was getting thicker. It was just covering more of her face, but it was almost like it was more emotional, and it was hurting her more emotionally than physically. And it was like her body was just almost melting and just almost like just giving up and just not even able to defend itself because it was just all broken. Her face was broken and her heart was broken, and it was just the most beautiful thing, honestly. And I can't get over it. And I understand how some people can think it may be too gruesome for women or anything like that. I don't. I do I want to see something like this every week, or do I think every woman's feud needs to have blood involved? No, I don't. And I think this was that impactful again because we don't see this that frequently in the women's division. Yes, we've seen blood, right? And we've seen them bleeding in matches and things like that, but this just hit different. This blood was more purposeful. And I think that is what AEW gets a lot of flack for. And again, if I had to nitpick something, I would have, if I was, whatever, if it was an agent, whomever, and I was looking over everything, I was like, man, like maybe we don't need to have everyone bleeding, like all this blood leading up to the main event too. Like Mariah and Toni Storm are going to have this big moment in the main event, the go home angle on the show. So they deserve the blood. Like, guys, like y'all bleed fucking every week on every show. Just hold out here. You know what I mean? Or if you wanted Brian to bleed, okay, but you don't need, I don't know. Like, to me, it just, not that it was a big deal, but just kind of looking back, like maybe I would have tweaked that. But again, that isn't even that big of a deal. In hindsight, to me, it's just like, again, a nitpick thing. But and just the visual, to wrap that portion of it up with Mariah just rubbing the side of her face on Toni Storm's face, and the blood, and some of it even got on her teeth, and just the sinister look. And oh, and I meant to mention too, before, right as she was going down with the first spike from the heel, she Mariah, as she was going down, like, just stuck her tongue out, and it was the craziest thing. And it wasn't like it wasn't like a crazy face, but it was like a, to me, and I know this, and it stood out to me because I could, not that I could imagine myself doing something crazy like this to someone, but for instance, like if I'm focusing on something, sometimes like I do, like I stick my tongue out, and it's just like not as far as she did, but I don't even want to do it because it looks fucking retarded, or not retarded. I don't like that word, but it looks dumb, right? So when she did that, it really stood out to me because I was like, wow, like that's just another little thing that just makes it even more believable. So I really appreciate everything that they did here. And that wrapped it up for the show. The broadcast on Dynamite itself. AEW did air again. I don't even know how long it was. It wasn't that long. But just the footage of Toni Storm being helped to the back. Oh, and at one point the referees did come out to try to break up Mariah May and Toni Storm, and Mariah ended up pushing Aubrey and knocking her down. So I wonder if she's going to be maybe suspended for next week to buy her a little bit more time off of TV. I would maybe, I don't know, like, you probably wanna have Toni Storm come back if you're, especially if you're not gonna have Mariah on TV, but I think if you're gonna have Mariah on TV, then I don't know, you maybe don't wanna have Toni Storm on there to sell a little bit longer, but you absolutely need one of them to be on next week's show, especially since, and, that I actually, never mind, I have the answer right here. But yeah, so you absolutely wanna keep Toni Storm off of TV next week to sell the impact and to sell the devastation. Um, but again, to or wrap up what I was saying regarding Tony Storm backstage, it was her being helped through not even their full gorilla position, I don't believe. But she was coming through the back, and they were about to go down the stairs, and I think it was like maybe two or three referees helping her, and she was still like kind of coming to, didn't say anything, no words, and she was walking down the stairs, and then at the end of the stairs, not even all the way down, maybe like the majority of the way, she just slowly collapses and then just lays back, and she's, again, like, she's just done, like her body is just done, like she's just given all she can give, and in the sense that she emotionally is just taxed. She can't believe it happened, like she's physically in pain, like she's probably feeling a million different things, right? um so yeah, I really think that it was so, obviously, if you can't tell, so well done. I cannot wait to see the follow-up, and I think this is props to AEW, and this is something that they needed to do. Um, and it, again, it makes me hopeful for their future. And to answer my own question, and I knew this too. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's fucking. I don't even want to say what time it is right now when I'm recording this, guys. Y'all are gonna think I'm even crazier than you probably already do, but Mariah May speaks. So she is being advertised for AEW 250, 250th episode, which is next Wednesday, which is crazy already. That they're at their 250th episode. So I think you open the show with her. I think if you close the show with that hot of an angle and that big of an impact and just the visual with it, I think you open the show with her too. Maybe that's crazy. Maybe you want to hold off until I don't even want to say like the 9 o'clock hour because I feel like that's kind of like a death curse, but that's where they normally hold the women and put the women at. But I don't think that's what you want to do here. I think you want to have her open the show, and I think that it's a big enough deal, and it's gotten a big enough respect that you want to hit the ground running with it next week too. So, and again, with all the hype that you're getting for next week's show, and that you're hopefully getting, and the hopefully the more eyes that you're getting to tune in, hopefully that's something that you want to promote, and that's something that will grab more viewers. Um, so again, shout out to everyone involved. Obviously, Mariah May is just the breakout star of that moment of that segment, but Toni Storm, man, she just fucking killed it. So props to her. She is earning every bit of that paycheck that she is getting and then some. So and it's crazy. Like if you think I was thinking about this even before Dynamite this week. I think it was I forget what I was watching some clip or something that it was some promo that she was doing. It wasn't anything crazy, but I was just thinking like, man, like to think that this Toni Storm is the same Toni Storm that got what was it, birth or was it a pie or I think it was a pie, a whipped cream pie, thrown in her face on SmackDown. What was it like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and just like they were trying to humiliate her, and she just said, "Screw it, like I'm leaving." Like I'm pretty sure that's what happened ended up happening with her. She just said, "Screw it," and she left the tour that she was on or whatever wherever they were going. She booked her own flight back home, and she is now here in AEW just kicking ass. So shout out to her and again another bet on yourself type situation. So shout out to her. She is she deserves every penny. But to wrap it up here, guys, and just to finalize here with the rest of the card and the lineup that we have so far for AEW 250 next week. And again, shout out to them and props to them. It's a big deal. And it's an accomplishment they should be proud of. Something that I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm just like, really? We do get TV time with the Learning Tree Chris Jericho, so no fear, we will have our TV time. We have the TBS Championship match, Mercedes Moné facing off against Nyla Rose. We do have which I'm still surprised they're even going forward with it, your AEW International Champion, Will Ospreay, facing off against MJF and defending his championship. Whether we get an actual conclusion, if it's going to be like a 30-minute draw, which I've seen floating around out there, if it's going to be a scrape finish, who knows? The fact that we're even getting the match, I think it's on TV rather. It's just kind of crazy to me, especially with All In being so soon. I don't know. I'm assuming it's going to be one of those situations where we get it here and then we turn around and get the actual match on All In, but I don't know. Like it's just very interesting that they're pulling the trigger and putting it on next week because what we're also getting next week is our AEW World Champion Swerve Strickland facing off against, what do you know, another champion, AEW Continental Champion Kazuchika Okada in a champion versus champion match. Um, Again, it doesn't say that any of the titles are on the line there. It's just one champion facing off against another champion with the percentage and the amount of titles that we have. That's not really that hard to do at this point. But yeah, it's going to be a good match. And obviously, it's going to be not a good match. It's going to be a fucking great match. It's going to be a loaded show with the stacked lineup match wise that they have here. They're probably not going to have time for too much more to throw in there on the show. I mean, I take that back. Like, especially depending on the outcome of the Ospreay and MJF match, you could probably, I don't know, we'll see. But I'm really excited for next week's show. I really, really hope that they open the show with Mariah May. Regardless, I'm happy that they're even promoting her, that they're already following up with it. They seem to have a clear direction. And yeah, I'm just happy the women are finally getting some love again. They've been on a better track for the past 6-ish months or so, if not longer. And it should only be getting better, especially with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, back as well. Obviously, she has her money, no pun intended, lined up with or maybe pun intended, lined up with Mercedes. And I don't even see that ending at all. And this is just the beginning, in my opinion. So yeah, that's gonna be fun, and it's just gonna be cool to see their interactions, and I can't wait to see their first promo segment back and forth. And I hope the first one that we get is them just face to face in the ring, kind of MJF and CM Punk style. Or no, not even that. CM Punk and Eddie Kingston style. And again, not saying that they had any, or these two women have any animosity or anything like that, because I actually think they're, if not friends, but they're very friendly. I remember seeing a picture of them two and then a couple other women posted at like some sporting, maybe it was a football game or some shit, months, if not a year ago. So yeah, like I not implying anything crazy like that, but in the sense that just going out there, having however, what, maybe 8-10 minutes of time, maybe that's too long, maybe 8 minutes, maybe that's a good buffer. Um, Going out there and just saying whatever the fuck you need to say, and being real with each other, but not being disrespectful, and knowing where that line is. And I think these two are definitely professional enough and pro enough to know where that line is and to kind of walk that line and make it fun. So I can't wait to see that. But as always, guys, thank you so much for checking out the show. We're gonna wrap it up here. I didn't even expect it to go this long, but here I am rambling on. But I very much appreciate you watching the show, and let me know what you guys think, either on Twitter, again, at Kickash Podcast _. You can follow me on Twitter personally at ASHMANNS. And you can also watch on YouTube if you're not doing that yet there. You can follow the show at Kickash Podcast, or continue listening on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. But until next time, guys, stay safe and enjoy some wrestling.